Hello and welcome to the first edit of 2016. Today I've got this absolutely stunning picture, Footprints in the Sand from Death Valley. Unfortunately, the New Year's resolution is still 1920 by 1080, so unfortunately no 4K as of yet. But anyways, this will not really be a tutorial because this is such a different picture to what I usually shoot and I usually edit. I'm really going to probably have a hard time even coming up with a good look. I mean, there's so many different possibilities, and I think this picture is absolutely beautiful. So let's get started here, bringing up the shadows and bringing down the highlights. This really doesn't have that big of an effect here in this picture. In terms of the blacks, now I kind of want to amplify this very, warm light hitting the sand in a second, but let's just see here. Do I want to bring down the blacks? I kind of want to preserve this very soft and, a very fine mood and look of this picture. Yeah, I don't really want to go to something like this. This is definitely not what I'm going for, but I think I am just going to add a little bit of contrast to really at least get some differentiation in terms of the lighting, just make it pop a little bit more. And I don't even think I would really want to bring down the blacks. I really don't like that look. So then the whites, I think I do want to amplify this light spot hitting here a little bit. So that looks pretty good. Clarity, definitely do not want to add any clarity. I think that completely ruins the picture. It really gets rid of all of the softness of the photo. So I might even try to go a little bit into the minus, just around maybe -10. And vibrant. Now vibrant, well, this looks very bad, but I do want to add some warmth into the pictures, as I said before, but I don't really think I'm going to do that with the color temperature, because then it just warms up everything, and I really like the differentiation from the left to the right, the left being a little bit warmer than the right. It gives a nice sense of differentiation. So let me quickly go down to the split toning first into the highlights, and just add some orange, maybe even a little bit more into the reds. Let me just fine tune the color first of all, and afterwards the saturation. I really like this right here, and just add a little bit of color here towards the left, and I think it has a very big impact. I'm not quite sure if this is what you want to go for. There are so many possibilities with this particular photo, and one would be this kind of sunset mood, another one would be this very neutral color mood, and then of course you could go into black and white and do all sorts of different adjustments. But personally, I've played around with this picture before I recorded, and I think I like this very warmish, almost sunset mood the best. So while we're at it, let's also go to the shadows in the split toning and just see if I want to add anything here. Now I do want somewhat of a differentiation between the left being, a little bit warmer than the right, but I'm not quite sure if I want to warm up the shadows as well and then just add an adjustment brush later. Yeah, I think I might even warm up the shadows as well. I really like this look as of now, and I think it works pretty well. So before any split toning and after, just makes everything warmer and definitely gives it almost a noon or even evening mood. So then exposure, global exposure, I don't really think I'm going to change anything here, even though you definitely could to even amplify these spots of light even more. But I think I'm not gonna go too far, not too unnatural with this edit, so I'm just gonna leave that there. In terms of tint, I think there's not really any color tint, so I don't have to adjust anything there. And the last thing, vibrance. Now, I might just add a little bit of vibrance because I really like that look, but I definitely don't want to do anything more. If you have the chance between vibrance and saturation, I definitely suggest you to go with vibrance, because let's just see, if I go 50 here with vibrance, it looks something like that, and if I like a 50 here with saturation. You see it looks completely unnatural. But that said, I don't really want to go 50 with either of these sliders, just around 20. Then let's go down to the tonal curve, and this is going to be interesting. If I go up here with the highlights, it really makes this spot too bright and it almost seems unnatural. So I don't think I'm going to change anything there. In terms of lights, I might actually bring the light slider a little bit into the minus, just so we have an even kind of more noonish mood. A little bit darker overall look. And dark slider itself, I might just add a little bit minus, and the shadows lastly. Shadows down here really just affect the very dark portions of the photo, so very different than the shadows up here. But I don't really think I'm gonna go too far with the shadow slider either. And lastly, why not go to the point curve and just see if there's any contrast setting I like better, but at the end I really don't want to, over edit this too much, so I think I'm just gonna stick with linear before any tonal curve adjustments and after. I think we got this sort of warmish, noonish mood pretty good. So let's just scroll down to the other global adjustments, HSL tool. I think maybe I'm just gonna reduce the saturation for the blues a little bit. Yeah, that looks even more natural. And maybe let's go to the luminance as well in the HSL tool. Really no tutorial. I don't really know what I'm doing here either, but I hope the picture is gonna look good at the end. So anyways, I'm gonna grab this luminance tool and just try to maybe increase or even decrease this luminance in the orange and yellows. I'm not quite sure. Do I actually like it? It might even look a little bit unnatural, maybe just a little bit into the minus. Before the HSL tool, after, almost indistinguishable, but it has a little bit of a difference in person. So split toning, already done that. Detail, definitely want to add some sharpening. Preferably you want to make sure that you zoom in 1:1 for that. And I like to go around 50 to 70. In this case, around 50 I think works pretty good, otherwise it's almost too much. Then you just want to zoom out again, hold down the Alt key, bring the masking slider to the right until you only have the parts sharpened that actually have texture, so no non-textured sand, for example, here in the background. And when I zoom here in, especially in this kind of darker part, I see a lot of color noise. So you just want to bring that color noise reduction slider to the right until it removes all color noise. And this is such a powerful tool, makes your picture look so much cleaner while not really having any bad impact even on the color. So the last thing in the detail tool would of course be noise reduction, and I don't like this slider. It takes away a lot of detail, and I don't really think it's needed unless you have a ton of noise, and in this photo I really don't think there is too much noise at all. So then let's go down here to the other adjustments and do my basic thing in the lens corrections, remove chromatic aberration to get rid of the purple and green fringing, and go to profile and just enable profile correction, and that will get rid of the distortion but also of the vignetting. And sometimes I like to even bring down the vignetting because I think personally in this case especially it looks even better with some vignetting in the photo. But that said, distortion removing is definitely a great thing. So before, after, and we're nearing towards the end of the global adjustments. I really don't think I'm gonna go too far into this photo since it's a viewer edit, and at the end I'm really just going for the overall look and not really for every single detail. But I am at least going to try out some vignetting here. Let me see. I actually think it might work just a little bit into the minus. Gives a little bit more attention towards the center. Yeah, So once again, I don't really think I'm gonna play around with the camera calibration since these adjustments have a relatively small impact, and since this is just about the overall look, I don't really think it's needed. So then we have the local adjustments, and this, it's still a very difficult picture, and there are so many possibilities. So first, let me try to grab an adjustment brush and just reset everything for now, and then just kind of paint over this right part. If I press O, you see the mask, just kind of this valley almost, or whatever you want to call it. And then I'm just going to try and go a little bit into the minus exposure. And surprisingly, I actually think that works pretty good, and it actually looks sort of natural. So I'm just doing that to give a little bit more differentiation between the bright parts and the dark parts in the valley, where the light is blocked through this dune. And I actually think it works pretty well, as long as I, of course, don't overdo it. So let me see, maybe even add some contrast, or at least play around with these sliders. Clarity, really don't want to add any clarity. In terms of color, now this is difficult. I thought about just adding some blues to give a bit more of a differentiation between the warm left and kind of in the shadow right. But I'm not quite sure if that actually works. It almost looks a little bit unnatural, especially if I go that far. So let's just go to the color and try out here some different colors. And maybe just sort of a lighter custom blue could work. Something like that. Just a little bit of saturation here, and then bring down the overall saturation. Now this might seem a little bit unintuitive, but overall you just make it a little bit cooler, a little bit more bluish, but by bringing down the saturation for the entire right portion, you don't really get too much color in the entire left. So maybe I don't really have to go quite as far. And maybe I also should add a little bit of green in the tint, because it sort of has a magenta tint. But yeah, so let's just quickly see without this one adjustment brush and after. It might seem a little bit obvious at first, but I really think it works, and it really helps to complexify the whole lighting situation. So, I don't really think that I want to make this whole sky very bright, because I think this very darkish and very saturated mood works pretty well, but I might just try to add a little bit of contrast in the sky. And maybe after all, just increasing the exposure a little bit, but nothing crazy. I don't really want to simulate any lighting there, because I don't really think it works in this case. But that said, I think this plus contrast and plus exposure just a little bit actually works a bit better. So then, let's see. I think I am going to add another graduated filter over the pretty much entire right portion. Just want to make sure that you have a very soft gradient here, and fine tune that just to have it over the right, and go a little bit into the minus exposure, just to at least sort of amplify this lighting scheme, from the left being a little bit brighter and the right being a little bit darker. And even though I thought I'm not gonna really add too much plus exposure over one side, let me at least try one plus exposure graduated filter in almost parallel to the negative exposure one. And just, not go too far, but just a little bit into the plus, and maybe even go to color and add some orange there to really amplify this whole lighting scheme and also the color. So, I mean, I'm not quite sure if that's the best possible way of editing this photo, but I think it works a bit better than before. It makes everything seem a little bit more organic, so I think I'm just gonna stick there. So another thing that I thought about was just making these right portions a little bit brighter. Now usually I would do that with dodge and burning and the radial filter, but I actually think since these are such fine lines, I really have to go with the curve, and that's just simply not possible with the radial filter. So let's just add a very small adjustment brush, of course with 100 feather over some parts here, and just then try to add a little bit of plus exposure and also a little bit of orange in color. Really just a hint, but I think it works and it does look natural between before and after. It's maybe just down here a little bit too much, but overall I like the effect actually, at least as a starting point. So then, let's grab another adjustment brush and go a little bit into the minus exposure and make it very, very big and add some additional vignetting over the right, just over here to, just amplify the lighting scheme and just go with the whole light and make everything look natural. So I don't really want to go too far here, so I just want to fine tune that. But yeah, maybe even just remove it completely in the sky. But overall, for the right, I think it works pretty good. So once again, before this particular adjustment brush and after. Now I'm not really that clear as I usually am and not really that decisive, but I hope you still kind of get what I'm going for here in this picture, even if I go kind of mixed from one adjustment to the other. So let me just take a second and look at the picture and see if there's anything else needed. I might, before I add the radial filters, let me grab an adjustment brush and just go a little bit into the plus exposure and also add a little bit of orange here. And you see these steps going into the picture, which by the way lead you perfectly, very beautifully into the picture. But you see, if I zoom in here, from the left being of course in shadow and the right being hit by the sunlight. So I just kind of want to exaggerate this plus exposure just for these steps, and this is a very small adjustment and I'm not quite sure if it actually will work, but I really do at least want to try it out because I think it might work. And just kind of make some more attention towards these steps that lead you then even better into the picture. So let me just finish up here. It doesn't really matter that much, I don't think, if I go here into the distance, but just for the bigger ones in the foreground. So let's see before this particular adjustment brush and after. It's a very small difference, isn't it? But I think it actually works. I might even go a little bit more into the plus exposure. Oh, haven't even selected this one, but I might just go a little bit plus. And yeah, I actually think it works pretty well. Now, I could definitely try even more stuff and, for example, add another adjustment brush with just some contrast to kind of get some more contrast in between these lines. But I think it almost kind of ruins this very subtle and very fine looking mood. So I don't really think I am going to do that. So I think I'm just going to finish it up with some dodge and burning. And, I'm not going to skip anything. So let's just do it here while recording. I think I'm going to start with negative exposure filters here and just add one over this right part of these mountains in the background. And once again, just make the right side a little bit darker than the left to really go with the lighting. And maybe, let's see if I want to add negative exposure radial filters anywhere else. I think it's very difficult not to overdo the negative exposure because I really think it almost looks a little bit too much. I really don't think I want to add too many negative exposure filters actually. Maybe just another one to even get the very far right even a little bit darker. So let's just quickly see before these two and after. I mean, it's such a small difference, but I think overall it really helps to amplify the lighting once again. So now I'm going to add some plus exposure radial filters, and I am definitely going to mix these this with some color, some orange here, and first of all just bring one over the left portion of these mountains in the background, and just, you know, make it a little bit warmer towards the left and amplify the lighting, and then just see if there's any other spots that I kind of want to amplify. I don't really think that one works, but maybe just have one to connect this bright spot with the foreground. Maybe not go quite as far with the saturation, but yeah, I actually think it works pretty good. I do think that you could potentially zoom in 1:1 here. Let me grab another one with plus exposure. And you could really even amplify this lighting scheme in the rocks. However, I don't really think it is that big of a deal because it's so small, and it would take ages to do this for all of these mountains and all of these rocks. That kinda looks like snow. I wonder if it is snow. But anyways, I really don't think there's too much else that I can do here, because this really is a very special picture, and by adding even more adjustment brushes, I really would just interrupt the lighting scheme and make it look not natural. So I actually think I am done here for this photo. And another thing that I actually try to do is just to straighten the horizon here, and some might like it better, but personally I think it really works without the straight horizon, because this whole scene is so curvy, and I think it gives even more a sense of depth and even more a sense of continuing these curves in the sand. But at the end, you have to decide for yourself. But anyways, I really think I am done here with this picture. I'm not quite sure if it's the best possible version that you could edit this, but I really like it at the end. And here is the before, and here's the after. It's definitely sort of a dramatic effect, really not that dramatic as some of my other pictures, but you do lose some of this very light and very low contrast, low clarity, and almost a bit bluish look. But personally I like this a lot better, but of course there are so many different ways to edit this photo, and this is just one of the possibilities. But anyways, I hope you at least enjoyed this video, and maybe you got at least one or two ideas or inspirations. I definitely think that this is a very strong picture, and I absolutely love it. So thank you so much for submitting this photo. It was a lot of fun, definitely way different than what I usually edit, and that was just really refreshing and a ton of fun. Thank you all, of course, for watching the first video of 2016. Be sure to subscribe for more landscape photography and Lightroom videos just like this one in the future if you haven't done so already. And if you could take a quick second to give me a thumbs up, that would be hugely appreciated and really helps me and the channel out a ton. So see you tomorrow with another in-depth Lightroom edit. Until then, I hope you have a great day, and of course, as always, take care.